Well, hi there, Elmer. It is wonderful and rocking to have you here with us today on Mines Talk. And so, first of all, we'd love to get a brief introduction of 𝗙𝗪𝗇𝗥 Metals, and of course, your background, because we always want to know a little bit about the masterminds behind these projects, and obviously a little bit of a brief overview of the company's focus and current projects, because from there, we're going to swing over to the latest Sombrero Butte project, copper project updates.
Well, I'll start with myself. I have a master's degree in economic geology. I have a considerable amount of experience in carbonate-hosted lead zinc deposits, VMS deposits, your unconformity-related uranium deposit, gold, and now more recently I've been in the copper space and for the last probably 16, 17 years. That's a little bit background about me. I've been involved in the public markets probably now for about, I'd say about 35, maybe 40 years. Mostly on the junior side. Got a lot of experience internationally, both domestically, North America, South America, Africa, Central Asia, Australia. Been involved all the way from grassroots exploration straight to building your own gold mines and operating them for several years. And so, yeah, I've got a broad-based experience across the industry, and I think that really helps you be able to make the right kind of decisions when decisions have to be made. But I've been very fortunate to have people around me who have also quite experienced. And one of the things I like to do is I like to reach out to people who if I don't know, I think I have a good Rolodex of people who do know that can help me get through that. So I like to get all the information in, to get all the opinions, and then finally based after that, I go ahead and make a decision. Now, 𝗙𝗪𝗇𝗥. I came here in 2009. And that's when there was a changeover of the company. New major shareholder come in. We reestablished the board. I come in at that time. And the strategy of 𝗙𝗪𝗇𝗥 is simply this. We are in the copper business. We are in North America. And North America is defined as Canada and the United States at this time. Why copper? Because copper obviously now is a very important metal. It's now classified as a critical metal. And if you look at all the projects that 𝗙𝗪𝗇𝗥 has got focused into, of all of them, of the 5 projects we have, 4 are copper, moly, plus or minus gold, plus or minus silver. Now we have one which is strictly pure copper. That's our Van Dyke project. So our strategy is to take projects through, acquire a project, work on it, take it through the exploration stage. Hopefully we can move it into what we call the advanced exploration stage, and then move it from the advanced exploration stage to what we call a development stage project. Currently we have interest in 2 development stage projects. One is our Van Dyke in situ recovery project in Arizona, and obviously the other is the 25% interest we have in the Shaft Creek joint venture with Teck Resources. The other projects are at various stages in what we call the exploration stage. I can tell you what those are. Eaglehead last year, it actually went into the advanced stage exploration stage because we were able to print a fairly decent resource on it, indicated it and inferred. But the key thing for those things was that the grades of the resources were fairly typical of what you're going to get in BC porphyry copper systems. So we were very pleased about that. And the other 2 projects, Mineral Mountain, we're at the drill ready stage. And right now we're working really hard to get Sombrero Butte to the drill ready stage as well.
Just a quick question: which project is in the moly one in?
Well, we have molybdenum at Shaft Creek. We've got molybdenum at Eaglehead. And the chemical analysis from Mineral Mountain and from Sombrero Butte shows we have molybdenum in those 2 projects as well, because those are the 4 porphyry copper systems that we have within the company. And we've strategized for porphyry because porphyries are what the intermediate and the large copper producers are looking for. So if you're able to take a project from the grassroots stage all the way straight through to the point where you can complete a pre-feasibility stage or a study on it, don't have to go that far, but if you do, we think that's the sweet spot to start on looking at unloading projects. Then the idea then would be is that what we've been doing is we've been working these projects to the point where we think it could be or would be of interest to either an intermediate or a senior copper producer, which implies it's got to be big and it's got to be potentially long life, and it has to have a lot of good things like good infrastructure. Got to have good economics, good metallurgical recoveries. A little bit out of sight would be a good, because out of sight tends to be out of mind and things like that. So that's our strategy. I mean, it's very simple, straightforward, nothing unique about it, but that's the way we operate.
You mentioned infrastructure. What's it like in your area in British Columbia?
Construction in British Columbia, the locations are out, they're away from the infrastructure, but they're not that far away that it's prohibitive. We got good roads. You got clean hydroelectric power, a source of clean hydroelectric power. You've got a year-round ice-free seaport from which you can ship your concentrates through. You know, you've got a very supportive First Nation group where our projects are located. So that's when we talk about infrastructure, that's what it is. So if you look at how far you would have to go in order to get to the Shaft Creek project, you'd have to build a 100-kilometer road. And people say, well, you know, that's 100 kilometers. Well, I'll tell you what, one thing about the industry is you give them a task and they'll show you how fast that they can come up with an idea to comply with all the regulations that are required and still build a road in there probably very quickly. Now, Eaglehead is a little closer to the highway. It's about 50 kilometers, and there's already a tote road there. But we don't use the tote road because it passes through the Tourniquet River, and we're not going to go through the Tourniquet River because we don't want to disturb the river, where we just as soon fly things in and out. If you wanted to build a road, you'd have to build a 50-kilometer road, and people give you an idea how much it's going to cost to build a road, but when you're looking at the grand scheme of things, if you look at the cost of putting these things into production vis-a-vis ultimately what you will get out of it from like a net smelter return, but more importantly, it's what's the impact on the local communities? Because you know and I know mines that are successful, you have a tremendous impact on local communities, jobs, potential, creation of career training, career moving.
It's interesting that you bring that up in the whole smorgasbord, because for me, that's something really important, the ESG aspects of it, and working with the territories, the communities, and also being very conscientious of the environment and the wildlife that's in it. So to me, that's very extremely appealing. And also the upside of it is that you guys offer such a really cool opportunity as an investor in environmental impactful metals. And to me, so thank you for doing that for our world.
Yeah, no, because I'll tell you, the thing is, I grew up on a small farm, and I always loved being outdoors, and I've never been fascinated, but I watched the beauty of nature, right? But I also understand that, as I keep referring to the job that we do, is that we're at the tip of the spear. If we find them, then somebody can come along who's smarter than we are, and they have to come up with the economic analysis to say, well, this makes sense or this doesn't make sense. But the whole industry now, as I see it, or at least from my perspective, is we're exceptionally aware of the environment. We know what happened in the past. We don't want to create, or at least I don't want to see that happen again. So anything that we can do, and I'll give you an example. When we planned the drilling program at our Mineral Mountain project, we specifically, because of our experience in drilling before, we specifically located areas that were flat, which means we don't have to flatten it, that had little or no shrubs there whatsoever. And why do we do that? Because we don't want to disturb anything. And so when we pick those locations, because you're looking for something that's a kilometer by a kilometer in size, doesn't matter whether you're here or there. Go to the site where you're minimal impact on the environment. That's where you put it in the ground. And so that's our approach. That's always been our approach, and we are not going to deviate off that approach. And we really like working with the stakeholders, especially the communities. We have an outreach program, and we're out in front of it. We're out talking to the communities, and we're going to continue to do that because we want the people, the stakeholders, to understand where we're at, what we're doing, where we're going. And if you have a question, we're open. You contact us. Happy to answer your questions at any time.
How do you see the copper market, say, ending up the year and how it will travel into 25 and say on for a couple of years? You've obviously been studying it for a while. Maybe be interesting to get your take on it.
If the way I look at the copper space is that, if you look at the historical growth in copper consumption year over year, it's like about 2.5%. So if the world consumes, say, 25 million tons of copper a year, 2.5% of that is going to be what? 600,000 tons of new copper a year. Yeah. So you take a look at a project that can produce 600,000 tons of copper a year. There's only one that I'm aware of, and that's in South America, and that is getting to the point where it's pretty deep and the grades have gone down considerably. So it's not going to be able to be the 1 million ton producer. So the way I look at it, in order just to meet the demand that we used to have historically, you're going to need about 600,000 tons of new copper a year. And that number next year, because it grows, because population grows and the use of copper is growing, you're going to see a higher number, which means you got to bring, say 𝗙𝗪𝗣𝗇𝗥 2, which Teck just brought on stream. I think they're saying that's going to be 300 to 350,000 tons of copper a year. So it means you got to bring 2 𝗙𝗪𝗣𝗇𝗥s a year into production. Well, I don't think we got them in places that you can start building without maybe some geopolitical disruption. And the fact of the matter is, if you want copper in 2030, you better start digging in 2025, because it's going to take you 5 years to build one of these things. So if you're talking the copper demand in 2030 is, say, 6 million tons, they better start those mines next year, because if they don't, guess what? Now, it's okay if you're going to take an existing project and you're going to build it out and expand it, that can happen in a shorter period of time. And there's a few companies out there right now focusing on doing exactly that. And it makes sense to do that. I've got an existing operation. I can expand the capacity. And so they can expand the capacity, then that's the easy build-out. But those mines, every ton you mine, you got to replace it, or your mine life is starting to get a little shorter. And it's the new discoveries. And right now, if you look at it, a lot of the discoveries we've been living off the copper for the last 50, 70 years, and more recently the last 20 or 30, they're all near surface discoveries. And if you look at where they're going now to find new copper, you take a look at where Resolution is. I mean, it's a phenomenal copper deposit. Technically, it starts at about 5,000 feet below surface. So it brings into a brand new sphere of what has to be the engineering and what has to go into it to develop these things. And, a lot of people are now looking at block caves. They're going deeper. They're more expensive, a little longer to bring up. But once they get going, they work quite well. So I think from just a historical point of view, copper demand is going to go up. And if you start looking at AI data centers, and if you look at the EV resolution, and you want to move toward that lower carbon green economy initiative, that's going to require a lot of copper. And the question is, where is it going to come from and how fast can you build it? And I think that, if you want to be conservative, I think copper next year will be higher than it is right now. Some of the forecast says it's going to range between $4.80 and $5.25 a pound. And the other thing is supply disruption, which nobody thinks about. Like, if there's a political issue in a foreign country that's a big producer and the supply gets disrupted, what are you going to do then? Where's that going to come from? So there's so many factors to go in it. But overall, I think the price of copper is going to go up. And I think it's going to continue to trend that way, primarily because I think the industry is being asked to provide a metal at really right now, given what it's faced with, doesn't have the capacity to do so, given the regulatory and the technical regimes in which they have to work within.
Can you tell us at this time then, for investors, how do you sit as cash position, and maybe a little bit of talk about what type of shareholders you have?
Shareholders, the insiders of the company, which is the board of directors and the management, they own about almost 59% of the company. And that acquisition of that position started in 2009, when the major shareholder came in as I guess you'd call him the angel investor that kept the company from technically going bankrupt, because I think that's where it was headed. And so most of the other shareholders are retail shareholders. Now, recently, some ETFs have been picking up the stock. I do think that there's probably a few small family-run funds that pick up the stock, although I can't confirm that. But it's primarily a retail base. We have over 4,000. The last count, as I recall, we had over 4,000 investors, and I would bet 99.5% of them are all retail guys. So that's the share the share structure. Cash, we raise cash on an annualized basis, and most of the cash that we will raise annually will cover the cost of the audit, the cost of investor relations, the salaries, the travel costs, the legal costs, the filing of your regulatory in the United States and filing a regulatory in Canada. But what we do is for each project, we basically put together what we need to do to take that project to the next step. And some people will call that stage gate. You call it what you want, but that's what we do. And so when that is known to us, then what we do is we just go to the board and say, guys, here's the kind of cash we need, and this is what we want to do. And we usually it's it's kicked around for a while. Sometimes they get my way, sometimes they don't get my way, but that's just the way it works in the industry.
That's awesome. Are there any plans in the future for potential partnerships and new joint ventures that you can share with us?
Yes, we have one joint venture going right now with Teck Resources at Shaft Creek. And the reason behind that joint venture was that Copper Fox initially optioned the property from Teck in 2002. So 2009, there was a change in management. So in 2012, what we did in order to cause Teck to make a decision, are you going to come into the project by virtue of the option agreement, which they had a right to do so up to 75%. And what we had to do there was we had to give them a feasibility study. But the key about the feasibility study was how it was defined in the option agreement. It was an odd definition, but it helped Copper Fox immensely. So we delivered the feasibility study for them. So then they had 60 days to make up their mind. So they opted to come back in for the maximum 75%. So we negotiated a JV with them where they are essentially, we are on the hook. There's a few key points in it, and anybody that wants to read it, just go on our website. You can see how it works. But essentially, we don't have to put up any money until they reach production. When the first ton of concentrate leaves the mine gate, that's when we're then responsible for it. But our strategy is not to get there. Like I said, we don't want to become miners. Been there once twice in my career, and it's a tough go for juniors.
100%.
So that's the only joint venture we have. And with these large projects, I think you need a experienced senior operator who knows what they're doing to make them successful, because they are capital intensive, and it requires an operating team that knows what they're doing. With Teck, they already operate 3 or 4 mines. They got the Highland Valley mine in British Columbia, 145,000 tons a day. That's about the same size our PEA in Shaft Creek was in 2021, 133,000 tons a day at 92% capacity. So they're about the same shape. So, it's not a new project for them to look at, but it's a similar project they have in BC. Okay. So the next project we have is Van Dyke. Now, we're always looking for partners on our projects. But what we want a fair value. We've took the risk and we've developed these projects along, and we only have 5 projects, even though we see a lot of copper projects come our way. I can tell you we're selective and we're really intelligent, but that's not the case. We look at the data and we see, does this have potential? And we've looked at a lot of copper projects and walked away from them for various technical reasons. But the idea is simply this, is that if somebody comes to us like our Van Dyke project, and they want to make an offer and they want to take it over and they want to operate, we're more than prepared to talk to anybody, preferably somebody with some operating experience, a copper producer, because there's always the more stabler ones, right? But the idea is, like, we want fair value, and we've took the risk. We've de-risked a lot of our projects, even the exploration stage projects, considerably, but we want a fair value. So we're open for a discussion. We're open to for communication, but we're going to wait, because we want not wait. What we want a fair value for what we've done and the risk we've taken to de-risk these projects.
Can you tell us, kind of in summary, what you expect in the coming months?
We're going to get the results for the geotechnical drilling from Shaft Creek in 2024. And that was done to basically fill in some data points from the 2023 work. The 2023 work looked like the strip. The conclusion was, it looks like the strip ratio we had in 2021 in the PEA is probably going to remain just about the same. But the more important thing was, we have a much better feeling for the geotechnical characteristics of the pit wall, not only for the strip ratio, but more importantly for the safety of the workers that would be working in that potential pit down the road. The interesting thing there is the drilling actually intersected 3 intervals of pretty large intervals of porphyry-style mineralization. And what I'm waiting for now is we need to wait until we get the analytical results. And part of that program is it's QA/QC. You do it, you get the results in the lab, you run the QA/QC program, and then if it fails, You send that whole batch of rock back to the lab and say, we want that done again because you failed on these standards. Now, it doesn't happen like that, because if the lab is busy, and they are all busy at the end of the year, then they take that and they put it in the queue, and that batch of samples may not get back into the analytical technique for 3 or 4 weeks. Could be faster, I don't know, it depends on the lab. So we're expecting that, and I'm really interested in seeing what the grades of those intervals are, because they're near surface intervals, which is great, because you always want to close to surface, less strip ratio. And then the other thing is, I want to find out where we're at in the metal. I don't want to find out. I want to be able to release the results of the metallurgical work once it's done. And they Tech have been working hard on this, and I've met their metallurgical team, their mineralogists, their metallurgical group, and really like what they're doing, and I like where they're going, and hopefully the results they come up with meets our expectations, and we're expecting that, and hopefully by the end of 2024. Now, if we get the results by the end of 2024, that'll be great. Probably going to take us a little while to go through that and get that out into the public domain, because everything we issue on Staff Creek, we have to get Tech's approval on it, and they have the same vice versa. So we'll get that out, and that's really going to be one of the big enhancements we had from the 2021 PEA, because we used 83% copper recovery in the 2021 PEA, and normally for porphyries, you're looking anywhere from 80, 86, 87, 88, 89% copper recovery overall life of mine. And that also has impacts on some operating things, the size of the mill, what the process is going to look like, what your operating costs are going to be, things like that could affect capital costs, operating costs. And then the other thing is, I'm waiting to see where we're at with the government, the BLM in Arizona. Do we have a permit to drill? If we do, okay, that's going to be really exciting. Van Dyke, right now we're doing some setting up a hydrogeological conceptual model, and with the help of a very experienced group in Arizona. And once they get that done, then we'll know exactly what we have to do for there, because the idea there was we brought the hydrogeological work forward because it takes 24 months of sampling, or 8 quarters they call it, to get enough information just to get to the threshold if you decide you want to enter the permitting process. Now, Copper Fox may or may not, but if we are able to do a transaction with somebody coming in, knowing we've already got this in the works, that gives them a better level of certainty as to, well, you guys have been de-risking this project, which is what we want to do. And then clearly at Sombrero Butte, we already put a news release out on it about the program. And we're using a geophysical technique, which we've used on 2 other projects. One would be Eagle Head, and the other one was Mineral Mountain. We like the configuration, we like the data, we like what it tells us, and it's pretty good from those 2 projects how we can tie the geology and the mineralization and the alteration to the geophysics. Because if you can't tie those things together, somebody did something that you better go back into the drawing board, because something's not working. So we're working through that now. The survey is done. We're working through that now, and hopefully at the end of that compilation, when we get it all in, we're still waiting for the report from Quantech. But when we get that all in, we're going to be able to make a decision whether we've transitioned that project to the drill ready stage, or what else do you need to do in order to get drill ready. And the reason why we do it this way is that you drill a project, and if you're a junior, you typically have 1 shot at it. Because if the drill results are good, everybody likes what you've done. If the drill results don't give the mineralization people are expecting, even though it might be still indicating you're just off the side of a porphyry, you're still in the system, it's still big, it's still robust, you just didn't hit the sweet spot. So what we're trying to do is get to the point where when we drill our first series of holes, we're in the sweet spot, because I think that's important. Also, it attracts the attention of the intermediate and large copper producers as well. And if you want a better joint venture agreement, you're better off having a discovery, even if it's only 1 drill hole, as opposed to, well, look at all these great results we got, and we think we've got this large porphyry copper system here. It's the word think that's going to reduce the value. But if you got a drill hole in it, then you got some real negotiating strength going into a discussion, if you want to do it that way.
Calling all savvy investors in mining and resources. Seeking the inside track on Copper Fox metals? Look no further than minestalkers.com for cutting-edge knowledge and real-time stock updates. Visit for the insights and stay for the gains. Seize the opportunity and explore the magic at mindstalkers.com. Uncover new investment possibilities today. Don't forget to hit the bell below to subscribe and then like and share this video. Let's get the word out there.